Hello and welcome. This is my step-by-step process to paint a daffodil. First, take the time to lightly sketch your daffodil and then wet just the center part. You're going to add a pre-mixed yellow into that area and move it around. You want a very vibrant, cool yellow. So not too warm, not orange, and just lay it into that center area. It's the brightest spot of the daffodil. Get all of that in there, and then you will let that set for a bit. Next, go ahead and wet the remaining part of the flower. This area is going to be greener, so have a pre-mixed yellow that has a little green mixed into it. Go ahead and lay that yellow-green into the wet area, and you will build the color slowly. So start very light and then add the darker areas as the paint dries into the paper. Slowly adding more of that yellow-green. You're going to concentrate on the stem now, and I have not pre-wetted, so I'm going to think about the stem, and it is a darker bluer green, so have that pre-mixed. It's a standard green with a little bit more blue added. So this stem color graduates into the leaves of the flower. And you'll want to notice on your flower where that green hits the flower portion. Also, once the center area for your daffodil has dried, go ahead and layer again with that vibrant, very intense yellow. And if you notice the flower graduating out, creating a 3-dimension, use lines to indicate that. And again, we're building this slowly. Notice the edges. If there's some edge detail, go ahead and add that in carefully. And pay attention to how wet it is. Maybe you need to pull a little bit of water out of this area. Going back to the stem, I'm wetting it now. And I'm going to slowly add in that blue-green color that I've mixed ahead of time, and I will blend it in to the top portion. I move around the painting as an area is drying. So I move to the petals as I'm waiting for the stem area to dry, and vice versa. So no time is wasted. I am moving around my painting. And right now I'm adding a little bit more yellow into that flower. Back to the stem, another layer of that intense blue-green, and you're going to bring that all the way down. So work on making a nice straight line. The stem of a daffodil is very straight, so we don't have that bent or curve of a stem that you might see in other flowers. So it's very straight, very distinct, and so work on creating a nice, strong line for your stem. And here we're going to build up color. So starting a little bit lighter, and then you're going to blend that green into the flower portion. So the way you do that is you add water to your brush, and then you pull water off of your brush to absorb anything that is extra water that you have on your paper. So I'm graduating that color out by adding water. I'm removing the water if there's too much, blending it into the flower and bringing it into the outer portion of the flower. Little by little, adding the green. And I want to make the outer petals of this flower more yellow-green and the inner part of the daffodil more of a true vibrant yellow. So you see here I'm adding another layer of that very intense yellow, and I'm paying attention to the ribbing and the texture by first indicating it with lines curving outward and then bringing in water only to blend them into one another, because you don't see a pattern in the inner petal, you just see that slight ribbing. So I'm indicating the shadow, I'm indicating the texture of the center of the daffodil by adding these lines and then with water only blending them together. So the center of the daffodil is becoming much more vibrant, and I like that it is distinctly different from the outer petals, which are much more of a green yellow and not a true yellow. So going back to the stem, I'm going to add glaze on another layer of that blue-green. So I'm making some texture here, but it's just to indicate the sturdiness of the stem. So I'm adding that on there, and I really just want to make sure I get my straight lines. I'm bringing in as much paint as I need, but once I have added enough paint to the surface, I'm going to tap off my brush and add water only. So that will allow me to blend that stem color outward towards the petals. So more water, little by little, tapping off my brush onto my towel. And then I've noticed that green carries into the outer petals, and that helps intensify that yellow-green difference between the outer petals and the center of the daffodil. So here I have a dry brush, and I'm slowly blending out that green. I want it to naturally progress from the stem to the outer petals, and I want to enhance those outer petals so they are unique to the daffodil, that they have that green yellow color and seem to be different than the center of the daffodil. I'm adding a little bit more of that intense yellow to part of those petals because I want to create cohesion. I'm noticing that that vibrancy exists in the outer petals, and I want to make sure the flower seems connected, that the center part of the daffodil is connected to the outer petals. So I'm adding that very intense, true, vibrant yellow all over on the outer petals in the center, and I'll let that dry a little bit and do some touch-up work. So blending mostly, especially with that green that continues into the outer petals. I want to make sure it doesn't look like it's a separate element, but a coloration of the petal itself. So I don't want it to look as though there's a green part of the stem coming into the petals. So here I'm softening with water and blending and adding little details a little bit more to the outer petals. I'm adding vibrancy to the tips of the daffodil and going over the stem area and the petals to make sure the color is blended thoroughly. I want to make sure that color is intense and there isn't too much detail, and any of the texture that I've implied fits with the daffodil that I'm looking at. I hope you enjoyed this step by step. And I've also painted a series of tulips, and I will be posting those in the future. And as you know, I like to stay with the seasons, and we'll be seeing vibrant, beautiful tulips shortly.